Hello, divas and dudes. Those of you at home joining us. Today we have a special treat. We're doing two recipes because they're very quick. Well, one of them is. um, and relatively easy. And so, again, my name is Raquel DeHoyos. This is our series on healthy holiday recipes. 'Tis the season, right? We want to still be able to enjoy all the delicious flavors of the holidays, but just with a little bit of a twist, maybe something new to present to your family and friends, with a little bit of health thrown in there too. So today we have two recipes. The first one that I'm going to get us started with, because it takes a little bit of time, but we do have a finished version that you'll be sampling, is our cranberry relish. So it's a winter spiced cranberry, and it was one I think I talked about for those of you who came to some of my other classes. I like to use some interesting spices when I cook, and so this has a few in it with that. So we're going to do that, and then the other one that we're doing is a whipped chipotle sweet potato. There is no handout for the relish, but we will make sure that we get that to you through email. So Rosie will take care of that and get that to you. So you guys, really, this is sort of my favorite pairing in Thanksgiving or Christmas. I have to make sure that these two dishes go together and get prepared together because tasted together, they are delicious. So that's also why I wanted to make them together for you today. So we're going to start with the cranberries. So I just picked up this great 2-pound bag of cranberries from HEB. They're fresh cranberries, and cranberries are a wonderful source of vitamin C, which during this time is when we're prone to a lot of, viruses, bacteria, all the sort of cold flu, throw on COVID, right? But we want to make sure that we keep our immunity, our immune systems healthy. And so vitamin C comes from cranberries. And I just love fresh cranberries. But does anybody know why we can only find them in the winter? Like when you...
Because that's when they grow. They grow in Wisconsin.
Yes.
In the bog.
Very good. So cranberry bogs, if you've ever had a chance to see that, either, Google it or see it. Yeah. So they're like these fields of cranberries that grow on the vine, and basically the way that they harvest them is they flood the bogs. So you see this beautiful kind of crimson colored bog. Wisconsin is the #1 producer, followed by Massachusetts, New Jersey, and then Oregon and Washington. When I was visiting the coast of Washington all the time when I lived out there, beautiful. In about October, they would start to harvest. So that was the first harvest in the fall, and you would just see these crimson fields of cranberries. So they flood it with water to be able to harvest because the cranberries float, right? So they are able to pick them a little bit easier, and then they'll flood them one more time in the winter just to make sure that the plant will survive because it's a perennial. And it doesn't, make sure that it doesn't get damaged and can continue to produce cranberries. So little cranberry trivia there for you, but fresh cranberries are great if you can find them. HEB has this great 2-pound bag right now. So what I did was I basically, just to kind of get it started, is I rinsed those off, put them in a nice pot here with 1 cup of water. And typically you'll see, even like on the back of the package, it's like the ratio is 1-to-1. So 1 cup cranberry, 1 cup of sugar, right, to sweeten it, because cranberries are very tart. You could leave it like that without the sugar, but boy, is that going to make your mouth pucker. So I recommend that you add a little bit of sugar, and I'm going to try something different. So when I make mine, I tend to use brown sugar and just regular white sugar, and that's completely fine. Today we're going to mix it up a little bit. We've got 3/4 cup of brown sugar, and then I'm also using this cane sugar. If any of you have seen this, it's Morena cane sugar, which is basically sugar. But it just has more of the molasses still in it, and it's not as refined as white sugar. So don't get me wrong, still has sugar, but we need a little bit of that to add to the cranberries to kind of mellow them out a little bit. So we're going to be adding 2 kinds of sugar to that. And then we're also going to add a little bit of cinnamon and my favorite spice, Chinese 5-spice, which is that blend of all those delicious herbs, spices that we talked about. And then we're also going to add in a couple of these star anise pods. So these have these beautiful, I always think like this is even Christmassy, right? Just the look of these, it's beautiful. And they just smell great. So we're going to add 3 of those in there. And I used to have a culinary instructor who would say, when you're using things like bay leaves, things that you don't want to eat, make sure you count how many you put in so that you remember to count how many you take out. Because nobody wants a whole mouthful of that, right? And these are really hard, so you don't want anybody chipping a tooth on these. So I'm going to just grab 3 and pop those into the cranberries here that I have on the burner. So in go that. I'll put this here. And then in goes our sugar. Sorry, it's a tight setup here. So we're doing our 2 recipes. We're going to make it work. So in goes the rest of that sugar. And then the last thing, which I have, and if Rosie, if you all haven't had a little breakfast yet, we're going to get you started with a sample. Remember I was talking about Cara Cara oranges, which are one of my favorites? They are out now. So I would love you all to try them. We're going to put them in the cranberry relish as well, but I'd love for you to try them just as is. They are not related to grapefruit, as many people think, because of the color. You'll see that. So Rosie, if you want to pass that around. They are basically a mutation of a navel orange that happened. I looked this up because I was kind of curious. I was like, where does the name Cara Cara come from, right? There was a Hacienda Cara Cara in Venezuela. And there was this mutation of this navel orange, and that's how this came about. But if you look at the color, like it's not the typical orange, right? It almost has that kind of grapefruit color, but they're just really sweet, and you can find them this time of year. So feel free to give that a try. We're going to do 3 of those into our cranberry, but what I'm going to do before that is my spices. And let me take a quick peek here. So we've got half a teaspoon of cinnamon and 2 teaspoons of the Chinese 5-spice. So let me start with our 2 teaspoons of Chinese 5-spice. And half a teaspoon of our cinnamon. Make sure I can see my half a teaspoon. Okay. And so I think a lot of people, you know, the canned cranberry is delicious. Everybody kind of has their favorite, right? Like they either love that or they make their own. Does anybody make their own cranberry relish for the holidays? No. And I think a lot of people are like, it seems really hard to do, right? There really isn't much to it. And I kind of like the fresh cranberries because you can cook it down to whatever consistency you want. Like right now, it is pretty drippy because I've added the water, but once the cranberries start breaking down, that's going to loosen it up a little bit. And then as it cools, it's going to thicken, as you'll see in the final sample that we'll be passing out in a little bit. But I like to have some of the little fresh cranberries kind of whole as well. I think that gives it kind of a nice texture. So I'm going to just pop in 3 of these oranges. And you could do 2 if you wanted to. Now, I will say, because the theme was healthy for the holidays, I wanted to just make sure I was watching the sugar on this, but we do need to have some because of the tartness of the cranberry. And then also we've got vitamin C from our oranges, so a double dose here, which is wonderful. But when I make my cranberry relish, it's a little bit sweeter, so feel free to take this recipe and run with it, is what I'm saying. You have permission. But I'd like to have you all try it today. What do you guys think of the Cara Caras? Right? Aren't they so good? Yeah, they're one of my favorites, and HEB has a deal right now. So if you're out shopping this weekend, see if you can find them in your local store. I know, right? Yeah, I mean, you could just put a pot of this on the stove in the morning and just, you know, keep it simmering pretty medium low and just let the house just fill up with those beautiful smells. Okay. Now, so I have all this peel, right? And you know me, I don't like to throw anything away. But you could use this if you were making like a mulled cider. Just throw some of these in there with some cinnamon sticks, maybe some of that mullein spice that you can find. Yeah, I tend to like, especially since it's Cara Cara oranges, like, let me see what I could do with that. I know a lot of people who like to candy orange peels this time of year and give that away as gifts. So, you know me, always making things. No, just like candied. I haven't made them before, but I think what you do is you basically like wash the peel and cut it into strips. You probably don't want like that pith part, the white, because that's a little bitter. but then you maybe do like a simple syrup with sugar and water, and maybe coat them in that, and somehow either bake them or yeah, you can eat the whole thing. Yeah.
You can find them at Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna just chop these up. When I make my cranberry, I kind of leave the whole peel on there, but I thought it'd be interesting if you didn't want to pick it out later. I just think it adds flavor. And so one of the great things about this during the holidays, right? We're trying to save time. We're making a million things. We're running around. This can be made in advance, at least up to a week in advance. I think it tastes even better. It's one of those things that just gets better as it sits. So make this even up to a week in advance, and you've got one less thing to cook when you're pulling everything together for maybe you're making a turkey, maybe you're making a ham. What do you all do sort of for your holidays for Christmas? Any Mexican food, tamales, yes, absolutely. My mom is making them this morning as we speak.
In Puerto Rico, we do pork butt. We put it like in a way roasted.
Oh, okay, that sounds delicious. Any particular like seasoning with your pork?
There's a lot of garlic.
Okay.
Garlic.
I love garlic. That's good for you too.
We do adobo. Like that's the seasoning, and my dad used to add a lot of oregano.
Ah, okay.
And his spice was like Italian seasoning.
That sounds delicious. I want to come to your house for Christmas. Okay, so this is coming together. It takes probably about 20 minutes. So we've got a little bit of time. So we're going to just let that sit. But now we've got everything in there that we need. Sometimes I'll throw like a whole cinnamon stick in there as well. But doesn't that smell great? That smells like the holidays. Yes. Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Sorry, let me just wipe this off and I will move that up a little bit so you can see. Or if one of my handy assistants can move that for me. We just want to scroll up a little bit so they can see the bottom of the recipe. Oh, okay, thank you. There you go. Yeah. One thing, you know, when we're making anything hot, again, just remember, this is kind of on a nice little simmer here. Just be careful as you're cooking around it. You don't want to get scalded with this hot syrupy sugar mixture. And then just allow it to cool. And as it cools, it'll thicken as well. So, and then just remove the little pods of the star anise. The orange is already peeled, so you can just leave that in there. It's super delicious. So I can't wait for you guys to try that. So we're going to move on to the next recipe, which doesn't take a lot of time, but I've already pre-cooked or boiled our sweet potatoes, and I want to talk a little bit about the sweet potato. So I was telling Rosie, so red garnet yams are one of my favorite types of sweet potatoes, and they're very hard to find, but I did source them at Central Market. So if you happen to be in the neighborhood or if you want to make a special trip, they do have them. And this is what they look like. So these are ginormous. They come in, you know, sometimes they're smaller, but the ones they have now are huge. But they have this beautiful kind of reddish peel. And then on the inside, I will show you, red garnet yams. Natural grocers. Okay, perfect. See how great that looks? It looks like a regular sweet potato, but I feel like they are so much sweeter than the average sweet potato. So if you can find them, please do try them out. You're going to get to try them today. Sweet potatoes are great also, vitamin C, also great source of potassium for us, right? So lots of great, delicious things in these recipes. So what I did was I basically boiled these. I boiled them whole, but one trick that you can do, and I tend to do a lot too, is I'll just peel these, chop them into big chunks, cover them with water, put them on the stove, bring it up to a boil. Once it's boiling, turn it down to a medium simmer, and then let it simmer for maybe, I don't know, maybe about 30 minutes, depending on how big the chunks are. But you want to be able to just stick a knife or a little fork through it all the way through. These are like silky smooth. So I'm just going to remove the peel here. And we're going to pop them in this food processor and blend them up with some other interesting ingredients. So these sweet potatoes, so everybody gets confused. They're like, why do they call it a sweet potato? Yam, what's the difference? Does anybody know? Just a guess? Yes. So It's confusing, and we make it more confusing. So sweet potatoes or yams are the name of the brand of sweet potato. A true yam is, you may have seen it, it's kind of like more like a potato. It has a brown, almost like hairy, kind of fibrous outer skin, and then the inside, if you cut it, is kind of like the flesh of a potato. They're a little more starchy, and they're not typically as sweet, although they can be, but they don't have this luxurious kind of like soft, silky sweetness that the regular sweet potato does. So that's not confusing, is it? I don't know why we call them that, but that is, it's marketing. The color is, yeah, they're kind of more like a potato. Yeah, kind of like a hairy potato. They are, yeah, they have some sweet. I almost kind of think of them like jicama, kind of like that. Yeah. Yeah. See, once I said that, you're like, oh yeah, okay, we got it. We got you. So I'm just taking the skin off of these, so they're nice and warm, and I did them just before I came, so you can try this warm because that's really the way to do it. Although this also is a great recipe that you can make in advance and serve it, cold if you'd like, but I do like it warm. Now, if you don't have a food processor, you could also do just a potato masher and do kind of like a nice rustic mash with this, because there's not much more that we're going to add to it, but I just like to bring out the silkiness of it. So this is it's a little over 5 pounds of sweet potatoes. I think I had about 4. I'll just pop that in here. But yes, this is like, even the smell of this, they're so sweet. They're so good. I can't wait for you to try these. A little bit messy, but yeah, like I said, if you want, you can just peel them, cut them into big chunks, pop them in the water, bring them to a boil, and that's not as messy. They are huge. I've never seen some this huge, but they do the trick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pulse that in a minute just to kind of blend it a little before I add this last one, but it's all going to fit in there, I promise. It smells so good. Some of the other things I like to do with sweet potatoes is just roast them. And then you can make, I have this other great recipe that has kind of like a chickpea stew that you pour over roasted sweet potatoes. So it's kind of sweet and savory. You can do so many different things with them. But again, if you can find these types, go for it. If you can't, no worries. You can use regular sweet potato. That works just as well. I've done it with both. The other thing we're going to add is a little brown sugar. So this is about 1/2 cup of dark brown sugar. And then the other thing we had used in the past recipe was this plant butter. So I'm going to use that again. We're going to use 4 tablespoons of that. And then the secret ingredient to making this chipotle sweet potato is the chipotles. So does anybody know what chipotles are?
Just traditional peppers from Mexico.
Yeah, so it's basically a jalapeno, but it's been roasted, it's been dehydrated, but then it's been reconstituted with an adobo sauce. So you buy it in a little can, and the adobo sauce is typically kind of like a tomato vinegar. It doesn't taste like tomato though. It's got this smoky taste, which is so delicious. So what we do, I'm gonna just move my sweet potato aside here.
So it's already in the adobo.
It's already in the adobo, and we're gonna put. Now, the recipe that I gave you is a little under. I know if you don't like spicy, kind of measure the heat with like, try it just starting with a little bit of the adobo. So we can do like a tablespoon of that. I usually do 2, but that adobo sauce is just, what these chipotles are sitting in. I'm going to see if I have enough to do a tablespoon in here. Kind of. See. There we go. So it's just this really nice, almost looks like barbecue sauce, right? Like the color. So we're going to add in 1 tablespoon of that. And then we're going to add in 1 chipotle. Now, you can get different sizes. Like here's one, right? And then look at this one. It's a little bit smaller. And then I had one that was like giant. So depending on your heat preference and your level of what you like for heat, experiment. Maybe start with the adobo sauce because that's got a little bit of heat from these sitting in it. I'm going to start with maybe the medium one. And what we're going to do is we're going to take out the seeds because we don't want that. Although sometimes some of them end up sneaking in there, but we're going to do our best to take them out. And I'm just going to mince that up just a little bit because sometimes even with the food processor, it misses a couple of these. So I'm just scraping the seeds out with my knife, as many as I can. And then you end up with something that looks like that. And just move those to the side. And I'll just do kind of a quick little rough chop. And we'll pop that in as well. And we'll put in our sugar. And then we're going to put in just 4 tablespoons of this. And this is great because it's already measured for me. All of these time-saving tips. I'll pop that in there. Okay. All right. Sorry, camera, for a little bit of noise here. We're just going to let that cream together. It's going to be silky, velvety. You're going to love it. Give our cranberries another stir. That's coming together really well. Okay, I'm going to just give this a mix so I can put in our last one. Make sure that's all getting mixed together. Oh my goodness, you guys, this is amazing. It smells good, yeah. And see how easy it is? I mean, there's really, you know, a little bit of cooking with boiling these sweet potatoes. You could roast them too and do the same thing if you wanted to. Maybe you already have your oven on because you're baking something else. Just pop these in there and away we go. Like the other recipe, this one you can start with these quantities. If you want to adjust the seasonings, maybe you want a little more, a little less of everything, including the sugar. Maybe you don't want as much sugar because your sweet potatoes are naturally sweet and you're good with that. Go ahead and experiment. I just want to make sure that it all got mixed. That's looking pretty darn good. And so it just has this beautiful orange color. Orange is great. Beta carotene, right? Good for our eyes. All of these healthy things. And this is one that actually I make all times of the year. I pair this with like a nice meatloaf, any kind of grilled meats. Again, if you don't have the food processor, you could just mash it, but it's really delicious. So I highly recommend you guys give it a try. I'm just going to give it a try just to check the taste of it. That's pretty spot on. And one thing that I will recommend, that's so good. I could eat like this whole thing. One thing I would recommend is if you like spicy, let this sit for a while, come back to it, and try it again before you add more, because the chipotle is going to bloom. It's going to intensify. Yeah. So at first you'll be like, oh, I just taste the sweet potato and the sugar, and then bam, there's the heat. So this is perfect. So that was just, medium-sized chipotle and just 1 tablespoon of that adobo. So I'm going to hand this over to Rosie so she can portion this out with a little bit of the cranberry, and you all can give that a try. All right, to my lovely assistant, Rosie. Sous Chef Rosie. Yeah, oh, if not, I've got some more on the counter back there. So she's going to come around with that. She's just going to, Rosie's leaving the room. So see how quickly we did all of that? And how much time do we have? We probably still have like 20 minutes. So this looks like a pretty good consistency. This is kind of where I would leave my cranberries. So you can see I've got some whole still, but then some of this has come together and broken down really nicely, and it's got that just even deeper, rich cranberry color. So this is pretty much where I would turn it off, allow it to cool, and we are good to go. Actually, I'm going to unplug this. Okay. once we get these samples out, that's all I have for recipes. But let me just make sure I covered some of our other information that I wanted to share with you. I always leave such a nice messy cutting board too. Sorry guys at home. It's part of the show. Yes, you know, you should see my kitchen sometimes when I'm getting ready for this. And it's like, that's the behind the scenes that you don't see. But I've been doing it for many years. And so, yeah, you know, some of these things are nice to be able to show you just kind of the final stages, but to kind of talk you through like, this is how you can do something in advance or kind of cut some of those time constraining pieces out of it. Like this really wasn't very difficult. So for anybody who buys the canned cranberry sauce, would you be willing to attempt something like this? Right? Not that hard. Not that hard at all. I'm going to take this off the heat, let that cool. So we talked a little bit about cranberries. And somebody guessed that Wisconsin was the top producer. So in the spring, that was one other thing I thought was kind of interesting. So, you know, they flood the cranberry bogs just to kind of harvest them. But in the spring, they drain them. So, because you have to be able to, you know, get back in there and check plants and all of that. Here's another interesting tidbit. So there was a gentleman named Marcus Uran, I think. That's how you pronounce that. And he was the founder of Ocean Spray and the canned cranberry. That was in 1912 when that first came about. However, it wasn't available nationally, like widely available, until 1941. So that delicious canned cranberry that we all love and enjoy has been around for some time. But it is interesting. Once, I think I was reading, it was kind of cool to see, like, once people determined how to quickly and to be able to harvest the cranberries, like how to do it a little bit better and faster, that's when they had this surplus of all these cranberries. And they're like, what do we do with it now? Well, we'll come up with cranberry juice. We'll come up with the canned cranberries, dried cranberries. So this is how we got to all of the delicious things we get to enjoy now. So I thought that was kind of funny and interesting. How many cans of cranberry do you think that we consume in a year? Take a guess.
Oh, it's got to be millions.
Yes, it probably is. When it comes to somebody, I don't know how they measured this, but apparently in a year, the annual consumption of canned cranberry is over 3,385 miles if you were to line up the cans. That is a lot of canned cranberry. Yes. That's probably a good idea. Yeah. Okay. We talked a little bit about the Caracar oranges. The other thing about the oranges is they're not as acidic. So if some of you have issues with acidity in fruits and vegetables, things like that, this is a nice go-to because they're not as acidic. One thing I forgot to mention, my love of the apples that we used in the first recipe, they don't brown. Those delicious apples that we were using for that recipe, they do not brown. Yeah. Yeah, the opal apples. Our red garnet yams, so they're a great source of fiber, vitamin C, obviously, B6 and iron. And remember how we were talking about pairing iron with vitamin C for the best maximum absorption. So eat a sweet potato, you got it all in one. I did not know this, but the leaves of the red garnet yams are also edible, and they apparently taste like spinach. So you can probably saute them, put them in soups, things like that. Yeah, and so yams are a trademark for a brand of sweet potato. That's how that came about, but it is very confusing. And let's see, last thing, chipotles. So chipotle in adobo is basically the sweetened dried jalapeno, and then it just gets reconstituted with that adobo sauce. Some people make their own. You can buy it in a little can, and what I wanted to mention too, sometimes you're like, I'm just going to need one for this recipe, right? What do I do with the rest of it? Sometimes you can find a can that's like super small and it just has a couple. What I tend to do is I'll put them in a little Ziploc bag and pop them in my freezer because I'll add them to chili. I'll add them to, like, I'll make a mayo with chipotle just to give it a little bit of flavor. I love that smoky taste. So even when you're like braising any kind of meats, you're talking about the pork, throw a couple of those in to get a little more heat and smoky flavor. They're great. So you don't have to waste the can. I know sometimes we have recipes and it drives me crazy when it's like, just add a teaspoon of this or a whatever. And you're like, what do I do with the rest of it? Chipotles are great because you can freeze them. So yeah. So any questions on any of our recipes today? Yes.
Put in the potato through a ricer, make it too like airy, or
Well, you could try that. These are so like they have a lot of moisture in them, so it might be a little bit like they're pretty silky. So if you put it through a ricer, they're not as like dry as like a russet potato, for example. So it might get stuck a little bit. But you could try it. Yeah, have fun. Knock yourself out. Give it a try. Okay, Rosie, do you want to? Yeah.
You mentioned nut butter. Is that in lieu of?
Yeah, and so when I make mine, I use regular butter, unsalted butter. But I was trying to do some plant-based recipes, so this is a non-dairy version. So this is great too. You could even leave it out though, because these sweet potatoes are so creamy naturally. I always tend to say though, you need a little bit of fat to kind of round out the flavor, and so that's why I throw in a little bit of that. Yeah, great question though. Okay, so I can't wait for you all to try this. Try each separately and then try it together because it's so good like that. And thank you everyone at home. I'm sorry you're not going to get to try it, but I hope you do make the recipe, and we will be sending the cranberry relish recipe off to you all shortly. But thank you all for joining me today, and we've got one more class left next Saturday. Yes. So our topic will be, we're doing roasted cabbage steaks with a lemon tahini sauce. Yes. All right. Thank you so much.